Welcome and thanks for joining us for this episode of Scope. Past experiences of elections in the country have indicated a dangerous trend. Spikes in violence, voter intimidation, coupled with election fraud rife is not new to Papua New Guinea. The police hierarchy who is leading the operations, however, is not backing down easily, indicating the security forces are ready to deliver a fair and safe elections. Police Commissioner David Manning has called on all citizens to make it their responsibility to deliver a fair, safe, and secure election.
The Royal Papua New Guinea Constabulary, together with the PNG Defence Force and correctional personnel, are confident in delivering a safe, secure and fair election. Police Commissioner David Manning officially launched the National General Election operations in Port Moresby on June 24th, 2 weeks before polling starts. Past experiences of elections in the country have indicated an otherwise dangerous trend. Spikes in violence, voter intimidation coupled with election fraud is not new to Papua New Guinea. Police Commissioner David Manning, however, is confident the security forces will deliver.
Protect our Constitution, defend our democratic way of life, and serve our country and our people. This coming elections presents numerous challenges and requires the highest level of commitment and professionalism. Only through our deeds will we be judged as to whether or not we are up to the task. Let there be no doubt in your minds as to why we are here and as to what we all need to do for our country. Our mission is ensuring we have a free, fair, safe, and corruption-free NATO 22. But the responsibility of this is not solely ours alone, but for every citizen.
With the deployment of troops for elections, there were concerns shared across the board of the safety of our officers at troubled sport areas, especially in the Highlands region. At the request of the PNG government to the Australian government, 3,000 pieces of security protection equipment, which includes protective vests, helmets and body armor, were transported into the country just before the official deployment of the security forces.
In Papua New Guinea, what we know is that people feel passionate about politics. I'm amazed to see every level of the country people really believe. Far more Papua New Guineans know who their local member is than Australians do, I suspect. So that's fantastic to know. But we know too that passions sometimes spill over into emotions and things can get out of hand. And there's an important role in this country for the security forces under the leadership of Commissioner Manning and the Royal Papua New Guinea Constabulary to ensure those elections are as peaceful and as safe as possible. And that's why we've agreed to provide this assistance. It's not the only assistance we're giving to the elections. With the Papua New Guinea Electoral Commission, we've also provided a great deal of assistance printing the ballot papers in Australia so they can be secure ballot papers, ensuring they can have the support from the International Federation of Electoral Systems for technical support, Transparency International Papua New Guinea so that they can monitor the elections and make sure they're as clean as can possibly be. The Australian Defence Force have provided 3 aircraft and over 100 ADF personnel have just arrived in the country and they'll be providing logistics support to the PNG Electoral Commission. It's basically ensuring the ballots can be carried to the regional centres where they're next to be and all the polling materials are in place in good time for the election.
Commissioner Manning maintains that all citizens must make it their responsibility to ensure a safe and free elections, and that is not only the responsibility of the Electoral Commission, the security forces, government or donor partners. Election violence started off 3 days into the nomination, with Mount Hagen police reported oil spill on Kagamuga Airport tarmac. The oil spill on the airport runway was done by locals in protest over the appointment of the Mount Hagen election returning officer. Quick response by police and the National Airports Corporation prevented further escalation and violence.
In terms of security preparation of the operations, we are at least progressing well. There are a little bit of hiccups along the way, but as time goes on, as with any major operations preparation, it's always a problem. Case of progressing quite well in that regard. The two Highlands commands, for those who don't know, we have the RPNGC is the only one that has divided the Highlands into two commands. So we have the Highlands Eastern Command, which covers Simbu, Chiwaka, and Western Highlands, and the Highlands Western Command that covers Ega, Southern Highlands, and Hela. Because of a lot of issues here and business activities going on, so just having one person in here to command is a mammoth task. In terms of security, police operations, it's not as easy as other people think or as you might think. So that's why we have two commands. So, both will be operating for the election operations from here in Western Highlands, Mount Hagen, and we'll have the administrative support from here, while the operations are rolling out into the provinces from Ega and Hela coming down towards Simbu. So those things are well in place, and so we are progressing well.
Reports of an unlicensed gun found in the vehicle of an Eastern Highlands regional candidate during the campaign period has also caught the attention of authorities and election observers. Police Commissioner David Manning again warned candidates and the supporters of the penalties that individuals found guilty will be charged under the recently amended Firearms Act 2022.
Those candidates and whatever you look, firearms have no place in elections. You have to seriously question the character and integrity of these candidates who feel that they need to move around with firearms in company of firearms or in company of people in possession of firearms. It just increases the threat and risk level of the election process. So we'll be dealing with anyone, whether it be a sitting member or formerly a sitting member or an aspiring candidate who is in possession of firearm. We will not take it lightly. We will enforce the law. If it means them sitting in jail, waiting for bail during this whole election process, then that is what it does. That is what it is.
Police were also on high alert after confiscating one blue field uniform, 3 police long pants with a boot, as well as one set of PNG Defence Force camouflage uniform at the Ella Airport. Reports suggests the uniforms were on a chartered flight into Ella province by a candidate. These were reports of security issues during the campaign period. While our security forces continue to carry out their duties, all citizens are being urged to work alongside security forces during the polling period until the return of rates to ensure we deliver a safe and fair election for all.
When we come back, Department for Community Development deploys officers as election observers for the first time. The PNG Electoral Commission should conduct an urgent review and lessons learned process immediately following this election. This is the recommendation from the Commonwealth Observer Group after the 2017 national elections. The review should include a specific component on the transparency of the PNGEC's operations, which needs to be improved in order to enhance the credibility of the PNGEC and the electoral process.
Tomorrow, Papua New Guineans take to the polls to vote in their representatives for the 11th Parliament. But how ready are the voters? And how is the PNG Electoral Commission and relevant authorities prepared for the 2022 National General Elections? A review of the 2017 National General Election was very necessary to prepare for the challenges and at all cost and repeating processes and procedures that did not work in the past election. The observation that was made by the Commonwealth Observer Group. The Commonwealth Observer Group pointed out that it was critical of the Electoral Commission to provide timely and adequate funding to provincial election authorities and service providers to minimize avoidable disruption to the election timetable, and that this funding be directly appropriated by the government to the EC to ensure its independence. According to the COG, the continuing empowerment of provincial authorities with new responsibilities could also help reduce cost and ensure more timely and effective election operations in the field. The COG recommended that the PNGEC provide training to provincial officials and ensure accountability of all expenditure within a specified time period. The observers arrived in the country on June 28 and will stay until the completion of the electoral process. Already, issues of lack of payment to service providers has surfaced.
On behalf of the Electoral Commission, we like to sorry lo yubla, so yubla wait no line. Lock sims la allowances. Like any other government organization or provincial government, I wait law and that's not government that. So time money may come, lo head office lo yubla, then only give lo yubla working one work.
Meantime, the Commonwealth Observers Group also recommended that the government should ensure timely release of funding to the PNGEC to enable a thorough process of updating the electoral roll. This process should be completed in advance of the election and finalized prior to the cutoff upon the issue of the writs. Security measures should be put in place to prevent further changes to the roll after the cutoff point, and political parties and candidates should receive copies of the final electoral roll in advance of the polling period. The COG, after the 2017 elections, recommended that the PNGEC consider providing for continuous voter registration, including online registration, by supporting local structures to collect enrollments with provincial election authorities responsible for maintaining the electoral rolls. It is highly recommended that the PNGEC develop a system for voter identification as a priority. The National Identification System, or NID, should it be successfully completed and with sufficient provisions for data sharing with the PNGEC could be used for this purpose. The PNGEC should also carry out awareness programs over the enrollment process, including display of the rolls and initiatives such as the Roll Lockup app. It has highlighted that voters should also be made aware of their rights to appeal decisions relating to their registration. Consideration should be given at future elections to providing voter registration forms at polling stations to voters who turned away because their names are not on the roll, to help improve the roll's future accuracy. Such registration forms should have a number and receipt so that the voter will have his or her registration number once the form is completed. Appropriate security measures should also be in place to prevent multiple registration to improve the accuracy of the roll.
When we come back, Department for Community Development deploys officers as election observers for the first time. Welcome back. Concerned individuals, organizations, and provincial governments have stressed on the need to establish cultural programs to preserve PNG's customs and traditions. Director of the Enga Cultural Center and Take Anda Museum, Aki Tumu, believes that leadership and effective communication have provided a solid foundation for Enga's successful programs.
Enga's Take Anda Museum is a treasure trove located in the heart of Wabeg town. It started as a bush material structure in the early 1970s under the leadership of Dr. Paul Brennan, who was a Good News Lutheran Church linguist. Today, the modern facility preserves and protects the stories and cultures of Engans. Director of the Enga Cultural Center, Aki Tumu, was in Medang before independence. He moved to Enga on December 25, 1975, after getting a call to help build the Enga Cultural Center. He has been there ever since, protecting and preserving his people's culture for the future generation.
Enga came into contact with the outside world in June 1934. Since June 1934 up to now, it's a little over 80 years. But real development started to reach the people by the missions beginning in the early 50s. From 1950 up to now is a little over 60, 70 years. In that short span of time, Enga has changed so fast. And that is mainly due to the kind of leadership that you have here. And again, Enga is a one language province. And so communication, which is very essential in anything, is already solved by the province being one language. And so 1950 up to now, a little over 60, nearly 70 years, at a short span of time, we've changed so fast. I would say it's partly due to the kind of leadership we have here, and Engans themselves, who have, if you look at the history of the people here, they devised strategies, implemented, and managed them.
Tumu said other provinces have over 4 different language groups, while Enga has only 1. This is why communication was never a barrier when it came to expanding ideas or disseminating information.
Our trade links, traditional salt, was the goal out of Enga. We've traced that all the way down into Jiwaka, into Chimbu, into Lake Kurugut, down to the Papuan Plateau, even into the Sepik. Before the introduction of the sweet potato, we had sago coming up from Sepik, salt going down. First, government patrols giving away steel axes and bush knives on the coast. They were traded up on the same trade routes that traded kina shells from the sea shores of the coast up to here. Axes were here, steel axes, bush knives were already in use by the people here, even before we had actual contact with the outside world. To sum it up, I guess it has to do with the people you're dealing with and the kind of leadership, and the people accepting leadership is one thing. And so I guess that has taken us up to where we are now, and with the kind of leadership that we have with Grand Chief Sir Peter Ibaras, this is one of his projects.
Tumu said the Enga Cultural Center was one of many cultural centers that were established around the country by the new government in 1975. Enga, however, has the only surviving facility. The Take Anda Museum started off as a major research project between Tumu and a female American anthropologist, Polly Wisner.
She came down here to the center and said, floated the idea and asked me if I was willing to work with her in conducting research to document the oral history of two of the surrounding major tribes, surrounding Wabek Township. I agreed. We embarked on that project, and the data that we collected was not confined to those two tribes only, but it overlapped into the next neighboring tribes, and so the project grew until we reached the border of Lagaip district and down towards the east, the Waknamanda district. That's after about 2.5 years. We decided that we might as well do the entire province. So the whole project took us 11 years, 85 to 1996. That's when we completed documenting the oral history of the entire province.
The thick oral history book served as the basis for the establishment of the Takeanda Museum, with Tumu saying young Engans would rather visit the museum than read the reference book.
And that ends Scope this evening. A kind reminder to apply simple measures to prevent transmission of the coronavirus. Regularly wash your hands with soap and water, cough or sneeze into your elbow, and exercise social distancing. If you are feeling sick, please stay at home. You can also call the COVID-19 hotline number for more information or assistance. Thank you for your company. Bye for now.